I'm doing more and more work in the health service. In the health service, they use motivational interviewing.
All the time, yeah.
So people are asking me, oh, how does clean language relate to motivational interviewing? And I don't know, because I've never done anything with that motivational interviewing. So that's the question.
Okay.
What's the relationship between the two?
Well, I'll tell you what, just to get us started, shall I? I was just scratching out some notes before. I'll just kick out what came to my mind. What's the relationship? And then there's another bit of like, what's the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Client-centered, like all so dissolving resistance. Like there's no such thing as resistance kind of idea compared to, I suppose, traditional like advice giving. Because the doctors are moving, that's motivational interviewing is like, instead of giving advice, how about this? Stuff that's quite like Rogerian counselling and client-centered and and like adapting to the client's model of the world rather than the clinician's model. And they call it empathy, but what they mean is, I heard this phrase, cognitive empathy. It's quite a helpful concept, I think, of like really trying to understand what the patient is saying rather than taking it at face value and then coming blam back with a load of information. And a potential crossover, which I think is something that's not actually there, but it could be, the sort of emphasis on improving a sense of self-efficacy in general. And all of those, I was just sort of reading like a summary of motivational interview and going, oh yeah, I can see how that's a bit like clean, and that's a bit like clean, and that's a bit like clean.
Okay, so emphasis on self-efficacy, emphasis on adapting to the client's model of the world and understanding what they're really saying. So that's cognitive empathy, and it's client-centered and comes from Rogerian ideas. And you said dissolving resistance, but I think you then went on to say that this is about not giving direct advice or not prioritizing direct advice.
Yeah, so they're all a clump to me. There's you get, I mean, you know this, I'm just but like you get resistance as a function of pushing. I always, it's like you get it in therapy, in counselling, in clinical appointments, by one person pushing their point of view, and that's why the other person resists, right?
Yeah.
And so motivational interviewing, and as I understand it, clean, are all about taking your clinical perspective, as it were, out of the way and go, let's coming round, so then you're inside the head of the patient stroke client. So that's the dissolving resistance.
And so that's sort of intelligent influence by coming round to the client's point of view.
Yeah, starting from there. Yeah. And the primacy of rapport. That as soon as you're at loggerheads, even a bit, then just pushing harder just creates more resistance, which is what clinicians find a lot when they just feel like they're nagging. And I'm like, okay, we've talked about this 25 times, and I say it'd be great if you drank less. The patient says, I know, but I really like it, and then we all go home, and nothing's changed. So all of those things, to my mind, I thought, oh yeah, that's coming from the same place as clean.
And it sounds like they've literally got similar roots in that they have at least one toe in Rogerian therapy.
Yeah, it's all it's all got that client-centered thing, hasn't it? And that I don't know loads exactly about Rogerian therapy, but I'd say clean and motivational interviewing both seem to have this thing of this you might call it like guidance, but not imposition.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not that there's no structure
mm-hmm.
in either the doctor or the clean language practitioner is directing attention in particular ways, but without
mm-hmm.
imposing their views.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be
but
true?
they're so certainly in clean, the practitioner is directing attention,
Yeah,
but not necessarily giving advice, but they are definitely influencing the situation by pointing the client's attention at particular things.
yeah. So it's not an absence of influence, but yes, it's like a torch, isn't it? It's like, oh, what's over there?
Mm-hmm.
What's over there? As a way of, and that does create influence, but it's content-free influence. Would that be a
or relatively content-free?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you said that was the sort of similarities between clean and motivational interviewing. What were the differences you came up with?
Yeah, I'd be keen to chat it through with you, because I'm not trying to give you a definitive answer to any of this.
In a minute, I'm going to ask you to do examples and things, but right.
Okay.
Get the big picture first.
Okay, so what did I go through? What I notice about motivational interviewing and this is part of what I do with doctors as well, is it tends to be very rational.
Mm-hmm.
I think because it's quite a lot of so okay, tell me what's good about drinking alcohol, tell me what's good about smoking, tell me what's bad about smoking. And there's and they might say things, well, how do you feel, how does it affect you? But one of the things I notice, it's not inherent in motivational interviewing, but it's how it's usually done, is it tends to assume that if everyone's got a clear list of pros and cons in their mind, then that's enough to motivate them. Whereas clean language goes like dragging out someone's deeper metaphors is seems to me to be working on a more unconscious level than that. So that feels quite different, those two approaches. If you're saying, well, your cake eating problem is like what, and then that's going to come out with something non-rational, quite different to, so what's good about it? What's nice about eating cakes? What's not nice about eating cakes? And I just list the two.
Nick Pohl's new book about using clean language in bodywork contexts is really explicit. He says he thinks that the use of clean language engages both sides of the brain and the body.
Yeah.
To surface much more information about what's actually going on in the body.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas what you've just described is a very left-brained.
That's how it's often done. I mean, there's obviously no reason why, and partly when I work with doctors, I'm often encouraging them to use that bit, but to go a bit at that stage of like, this would be bad for my health, to kind of know, well, okay, why does that matter? Yeah,
because doctors have a tendency to stick with the left brain, stick with the rational.
Yeah.
If they can.
Yeah, so that felt like a difference in angle. Was there anything else around? Just so I've got my little list. Yes, I think that was the one that really struck me. And of course, there were other things, as I understand it. Clean language is probably a bit less proceduralized by motivational interviewing. There is a kind of a sense of like, stage 1, do this, stage 2, do this, stage 3, do this. Whereas clean language tends to be a bit more your way, more organically.
Yeah. So there is a definite sequence to motivational interviewing.
You put me on the spot. I think it seems to be quite clear what you're supposed to do next. And I don't want to speak out of turn and say yes, there definitely is, or yes, there definitely isn't. My impression is of it being, and I'm not enough of an expert in clean to know how much it tends to be worked. But that seems to be like perhaps a slight difference from my clinicians.
So what I'm now wondering is what would happen if we cleaned up motivational interviewing?
Yeah.
What would clean add to motivational interviewing?
Well, if what I know you were discussing, like, well, how would be the best way to interface with doctors like about this. The thing that I notice is healthcare generally doesn't like new models. I think. Partly because the poor practitioners, I've got so many acronyms thrown at them, left, right, and centre. Like, the last thing I think practitioners need is another acronym, another system. So I think the thing that would help best would be to, if they've already got that kind of motivational interviewing framework, to kind of go, okay, well, here's some ways you can soup up what you're already doing. Like, for example, if they're already like, right, really want to understand the patient's perspective on this in their sort of empathy piece, then wouldn't it be great at that stage for them to draw out a metaphor from and explore it in that way? And also, I thought about this. Improving sense of self-efficacy is a general thing that one is encouraged to do in motivational interviewing. Like, well, what are you good at? What have you succeeded at in other areas of your life? And where do you have power and things like that? And it just struck me that like a mini clean language piece there around someone's strengths would really help.
So when you are at your most self-efficacious, you are like what?
Yeah. For example, especially if it's come up, like, oh, I'm not really confident I can do this, or or whatever. You go, okay, so when you are confident, and then.
Yeah, it does sound like the two frameworks could sit quite neatly together.
Yeah. If you were, I would tend to teach it. Are you thinking of it for like GPs or?
I'm not necessarily thinking of a specific, well, I am thinking of a specific group. I've done some work. I've already completed some work with some health coaches in Australia.
Yeah.
And they are working with what they call the gnarliest 20% of the gnarliest 20% of service users. And they learned clean language first.
Right.
And now they're going to use they're going to learn motivational interviewing.
Okay.
So I'm interested to know, because I hope they're going to talk to me about what happens next. I'm interested to know, enough about it to have a sense of how it could fit together. But also there's another piece of work where I'm going to be talking to some people who are likely to already have learned motivational interviewing. In this case, I think they're specialist nurses.
Yeah.
And the chances are that they're going to go, okay, well, we know motivational interviewing. How do we mesh clean with it? And I think the piece is going to be that going deeper, that getting the what I started calling the known unknowns.
Yeah.
So getting the stuff that people know but don't know that they know about themselves, getting that up to the surface.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's one of the places that clean with metaphor provides really high value.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you were, I would be. It depends how long you've got. Is it like an hour or 3 weeks or?
Typically, I'm selling either a couple of days of training or 6 times 90 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's quite a bit then, isn't it?
But if it's an hour, then, you know, I did an hour with a group of agile coaches on Monday night and just showed them how you could use clean language to, the talk topic was known unknowns. So I did an exercise with just 2 clean language questions, and starting from a metaphor. When you're working at your best, you're like, what?
Yes, yeah.
And we did that. We had a group of about 60 people in the room, and it was really buzzing and noisy.
Yeah.
But in just, under 10 minutes, they got the hang of how they could use these questions to explore a metaphor.
Yeah.
So actually, it isn't a big chunk to teach them at a very simple level. It's a big chunk once you get them deeper.
Yeah. You talked about bringing 2 frameworks together. And I think that's to my mind, that's often the bit to be wary of, because it makes people feel like they have to choose. Like, am I going to do this framework or am I doing that framework?
Yeah.
This is what everybody's doing by motivational interviewing. So therefore, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I tend to. My instinct would be, unless you had a big enough amount of time for people to have 2 frameworks and then integrate them both, would be to, as we were saying, like, find ways to fit clean language pieces into a framework they're already familiar with. Yeah. Like, you ask your client about what are the, you're trying to understand, you're asking your client about, your patient about how they feel about their weight problem or their smoking or whatever. Tell me what you normally do. Okay, now let me show you an extra thing you could do in that piece.
So is that the sequence? So you find out how they feel, find out what they normally do, and then let me show you an alternative.
This was for this was me thinking of how you would teach clean language.
Okay, sorry.
To fit into.
Okay, sorry, I was mistaking. So what is the actual sequence for motivational interviewing?
Not wildly different, and from what most therapist-y, coachy kind of people would be familiar with. So, reducing pressure, not like empathizing with things from the client's point of view, then what they call exploring ambivalence. So the idea that most people with what we might call a bad habit, whatever they might say initially, usually are a bit torn. Like, I really like drinking, but then I don't like hangovers, or something like that. They usually have 2 parts to it. And so motivational interviewing is then about developing that, what they call the discrepancy, developing the discrepancy between like what you want and what the habit is doing to you, in a way that's and the primary piece being it's patient-led rather than doctor-led, precisely to avoid that thing of the resistance.
And then what happens? What's the next step in the sequence?
I have a feeling that this is a missing piece. Mm-hmm. As I understand it, in most motivational interviewing, it sort of ends around there. It's like, okay, brilliant. So you're going to eat my healthily from now on, or something like that. And
as we know, that has been wildly successful.
Yeah. Well, I think it misses out a big piece of how.
Yeah.
Like, certainly the doctors I work with, that's one of the main gaps. Mm-hmm. They'll get to a point of agreeing that person X is going to cut down on smoking or eat less sugar, with no discussion at all about the strategies for how to actually do it. I don't think that's part of motivational interviewing. When I'm working with them, that's part of the thing I try to add in. Is like, well, make sure you've actually one of the best ways you can help is helping someone have a plan, essentially.
So that piece, the strategy of actually how do I apply what we've just concluded, is one bit that's missing. The other bit potentially is that it's all very left-brained, and the whole body is not necessarily involved in the decision.
I think clean could add so much in that piece of just. I think a lot of motivational interviewing situations often just turn into like a pros and cons list. Like, okay, so we've seen that you enjoy this thing, and you're also aware that it's causing you these health problems. Okay. And it's kind of rather than actually getting into the gut. So I encourage them to dig a bit deeper by saying things like, so why does that matter to you? What's important to you about that? To just keep digging down until the patient can find why. If they care, then they can connect to why. But I could see clean could really work well in that piece.
So is there a resource, is there a book, is there a website or anything that would sort of step me through
a classic motivational interview?
Yeah.
There were absolutely loads. It's such a common thing. The classic book, as you know, is by Miller and Rolnick.
Is that still the best book?
Oh, I've no idea. It's the one that people refer to. I've no idea if it's how useful it is. Probably for your purposes might be too much detail, and I would imagine. I know you might check out Bradford GPVTs, which is a training group for GPs in Bradford. But I know they just have a very good website with loads of resources on it. So you might find like a 2-page summary. It would save you many hours reading through.
That would be handy.
A Bible,
I don't really need to read another Bible. It sounds like I'll know quite a lot of this stuff that goes into this. I just don't know the complete package.
Yeah. I think that would be the big, and of course, you say it's health coaches and specialised nurses. Did you say?
The current, there could be all sorts of other people in the future.
The key barriers actually for people are, for doctors anyway, I tend to work with most. If I think of all the objections, and the resistance from their side would be, what, yet another thing to do in the tiny amount of time I've already got? Yet another person giving me another job. It's like, I think that's what it feels like to them. I don't have time to do this. All of that, and the personal things, and I suppose also a big challenge around how can you put it, less proceduralized work. Is that it's hard to provide sort of clinical trials because, as you know, if you just tell everybody that their problem is an elephant and now describe the elephant, then you've just taken out the whole point. The whole point is it's subjective. So there's a sort of a left brain object barrier there of, well, we're thinking objectively, but you're giving us something that's fundamentally subjective. So how do we measure it?
See, when you teach motivational interviewing, how long does it take you?
Yeah, I don't really teach motivational interviewing, would be the answer. What I do is take stuff from solution-focused therapy and sort of nudge things, and cognitive behavioral therapy, and put it, and for the reasons we've discussed, I put it into, it's like a bag of tools rather than a system. Because I always found they didn't like the idea of it. So I usually get like half a day, maybe something like that, is enough for them to have, all right, I've got 6 to 10 things I can do and say when I feel appropriate, when I decide it's appropriate, which they like quite a lot, because my work has been mainly making things as simple and quick and easy to remember and do as possible, because their brain space, they're already at 99% capacity, and if you give them 10%, that's too much. I can't do it. It's like, I need a sentence I can go, right, say this thing, so I often get put on the schedule as motivational interviewing. In truth, it's not really. I've taken something from motivational interviewing, particularly reducing resistance, but then added in the bits that I felt were missing and taken out the bits that I didn't think were helping as much. And
Brilliant. That's really, really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah.